Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Kim Zadel with the Coding Dyslexia Idaho, and we are very thankful today to have Lacey Watkins as our presenter. She's out of the Moscow School District, and she's a K-5 interventionist, and I will let her do the rest of her bio for you. This is recorded so you can share it with your friends and other teachers. We encourage to spread the word about the dyslexia. As a highlight, we do have our bill in front of the House tomorrow. It is a kind of a rewrite edit job of our original bill that passed through the Senate unanimously. It's now in front of the House to be printed tomorrow, hopefully, and then it'll probably be heard next week in the two chambers, we hope. So with that, I would like to introduce Lacey.
Hello, thanks for joining tonight. Before I begin, I think we discussed a little bit about the roles for people who were on our Zoom tonight. But if you want to tell me if you're a parent, a student, a teacher, or an aspiring educator, that will help me as I'm talking to you tonight.
Okay, Elizabeth, what do you do?
I'm a homeschooling mom of a dyslexic son.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Well, hopefully I'll have fun stuff for you.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've been excited about this.
And Sammy is a student, and Melissa is a school psychologist in the CUNA School District, and Amanda is what we call Mama Bears. She's got a dyslexic son, right?
Yes, and I actually live in Kendrick, but I work at the Moscow School District at McDonald Elementary. I'm a cook.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah.
Well, pick my brain anytime if you would like. I love
Awesome.
talking about reading.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I think if you are frozen to me, but I don't think I'm frozen to you. Can you see me?
Right. That's what happens. You don't get to see us.
Okay, but you can see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So tonight I'm going to talk about finding fun and structure in learning to read. And let's see if okay, so what are my credentials? Why would I talk about it, and why should you listen to what I'm talking about tonight? So first I'll go over the serious kind of boring credentials, which is that I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education. I focused my bachelor's degree in reading, and I have a reading endorsement. And then I returned to school and got my master's of curriculum and instruction. And then all of my elective classes were focused on intermediate mathematics. As for my fun credentials, I have firsthand experience being a child, and I feel like I'm still an adult child sometimes. As growing up, I was a babysitter for children in my community. In college, I was a nanny, and then I was lucky enough to be an aunt. I did my student teaching in a 2-3 combo, where I got to work under a mentor teacher who was very family focused, learned a lot about how to incorporate families into learning. Then I taught preschool for 2.5 to 4-year-olds, worked with some very creative, imaginative teachers, became a parent myself, and then I worked in an after-school program, which ended up also turning into teaching a baby room and a 1-year-old room. First job in public elementary school was teaching first grade in an arts magnet school. And then I volunteered at the Potlatch Community Center with students after school when I moved up to North Idaho. And then I became kind of this neighborhood math homework helper for for kids in my neighborhood. They would just kind of like set up shop, and when I'd come home, I'd help them with their math. For 2 years, I then taught kindergarten here in Moscow, and now I'm on my 3rd year of teaching interventions for K through 5 in reading and mathematics. And then I also put beginning violinist. It may not seem like it ties in yet, but I've learned a lot as a teacher by being a student of something brand new. All right, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Can you all hear and see me fine?
Yes.
Okay, it feels very weird that I can't see your faces. So it's a different experience for me to talk to a screen. So on my agenda, I have making learning fun, which is us just kind of exploring why would we approach it from a place of play. And then I go through phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, word study and phonics, multi-sensory learning, and puppets, just because there wasn't a better place to put them. Sight words and high frequency words, fluency, comprehensions, and then questions and answers, and some resources that I like to use. Any questions so far before we dive into the next slide? I take that as a no. So play is often talked about as if it were relief from serious learning, but for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. So being a big kid at heart, I'm always thinking of ways of like, how can I make what I need students to learn into a game and something fun, because that's really what their natural way to learn is. Oh, come on, PowerPoint. Okay, so serious learning. When we think about learning in our past that was serious, I want us all to think for a second, what did we learn from a serious learning experience? What do we think we were supposed to learn? What emotions did we feel? And how did it impact our perspective of the content? And how did it impact the perspective of our learning? So I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute, just so we can discuss those questions. And I'll just repeat them again. So thinking to yourself, what was it that you were learning? What were you supposed to learn? How did you feel? How did it change how you felt about what you were supposed to be learning? So if I was supposed to be learning to read and it felt really serious, what emotions did I feel? How did I feel about learning in general? And how did I feel about that specific thing afterwards? I'm going to just sit for a second and let you think on it. And when somebody has an experience they'd like to share, let me know and we'll go from there.
I was thinking I took an Orton Gillingham training. And so the serious learning, I was very excited about it. And because even though it was serious and I was nervous and all of that, I was able to focus, but I realized that is though, because I have all of that experience of being successful at learning. So when I was younger, I felt a lot more pressure and I was nervous and anxious and like the pressure of it. But now that I'm older and I've learned I can learn, I have that confidence now. So I think now it's easier to learn something new because you have that confidence that you've done it before. But when you're younger, you don't have that yet.
Yeah. Anyone else?
And that's a good point. I knew in college, as we all do, you have a lot more reading to do. And I remember I took a US history class and I had like 10 books to read. They were skinny, but for me, that was like, forget it. And I told my roommate, I'll see you next semester because I'm in the library for the rest of my life, you know. But I do agree with you. Now as an adult going back, um, I had a different career before I became a teacher, and so going back and getting my certification, I wanted to be there, so it was different than having to be there, and so the learning was a little bit easier and more exciting because it was something I wanted to do.
Yeah. So on my biography, I said that I was a violin student. And this is kind of where it really comes into play for me is music didn't come naturally to me. All through childhood, I thought it was like interesting and fun, but I couldn't hear what other people heard. Like, you need to go higher, you need to go lower. I don't know what you're talking about. I just couldn't. And I got this very poor self-esteem about I'm not musically inclined. I must not be musically inclined. It's not my thing. I'm not good at it. And then I fed that to myself and was very embarrassed about singing or picking up an instrument. I felt very intimidated by people who could do it. And then my daughter got interested in violin and we signed her up for violin, and I couldn't help her. I didn't know how to help her. And so I started taking violin as an adult, and it was humbling to not be good at something as an adult and realize you're not good at this, but you can get there. And so I've been taking violin for 4 years. I can now hear things that I hadn't heard before. I can recognize notes, and I can tell when I'm out of tune, which is amazing to me. But those help me have empathy for students when I'm asking them to do something I'm really good at. I'm good at reading. I like to read. It's not easy for everybody. And I always think like, oh, how humbling it was. One experience in particular is my teacher said, Lacey, hum the melody before you play it. And I froze, like I was petrified. I looked very obstinate and rude. And I physically couldn't make myself hum it because I felt so uncomfortable with my ability. Again, gave me some perspective into when a student doesn't perform, maybe it's not them trying to not do something. Maybe it's very intimidating. So when I think of serious learning, I definitely think of like content can be serious. The way we present it doesn't have to be. And my violin teacher walked me through it very beautifully, just pulling back to smaller pieces that were more approachable. Did you see something in the comments?
Yeah, Sammy's saying in my case, I had a quite interesting experience while learning reading. It felt like a continuous, serious task, more than a fun and enjoyable journey. I can appreciate that. I grew up in a small town where they taught me in a completely different language. And I remember being very confused. So I was very anxious and confused most of the time, particularly because my teachers doubted of my ability to learn a new language. Reading was a very intimidating task. Yeah. And if you're dyslexic, that second language is a lot harder.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and share because the next part, I think, will bring our mood up a little bit. So now I want you to think about a fun and memorable learning experience. So what are the features of a fun and memorable learning moment? So what did you learn? What do you think you were supposed to learn? What emotions did you feel? How did it impact your perspective of the content you were supposed to be learning? And how did it impact your perspective of learning in general? So I'm going to stop sharing screen for just a second. And then I'll repeat them because you can't see it, which is super fun. But what did you learn? What did you think you were supposed to learn? What emotions did you feel? How did it impact your perspective of the content? And how did it impact your perspective of learning? So a fun memory of learning. It doesn't have to be formal setting either.
Mine was 2 summers ago. And so I was 68 at the time. And I learned syllabication for the first time. And we were using movable alphabet. And I was able to take a big scientific word, separate it out, and my brain went, oh, you can read it, which I never could do before. So that was one of the very few learning experience that for me was fun, other than if it's a math problem. I like math, but if it's anything to do with reading, forget it.
Does anyone else have a fun experience learning?
I don't like not being good at things. I mean, I think we're all that way. So like learning something, I'm always glad afterwards that I learned it. But yeah, I've been memorizing, there's like quizzes online to memorize geography, and my son was of the world, and my son was getting way ahead of me, and I just beat him. And I was so glad. It's like, oh, now I know where the Yukon River is, and now I know where the whatever lake is. And so that's been fun to be like, oh, when someone talks about a place, I know where that is now.
Yeah. I feel like things that I learned that were fun experience weren't always at school. Like I remember learning to water ski with my family, and it was hard, but feeling that accomplishment and encouragement. I do remember like a teacher who stood out to me, and I don't know what content I was supposed to be learning, but I just remember having completed a project and them asking if they could save it for the next year as an example, how proud I felt and how fun that was to have somebody like recognize that, you know, your learning and product were worth saving for something. Anyone else have a happy learning experience they want to share before I go back to sharing screen? All right, I am going to share screen then. I also have to say this, this picture I love because a partner teacher and I taught summer school one year, and we thought, man, we want to make summer school something kids want to go to. And so we pulled every trick out of the hat that we could. And one of them was I have a parachute at home. And so we put words on the balls, and then we would either have them go underneath and like alligators and bring them out and sort them, or we'd put them on top and pop the parachute up. They'd scatter everywhere, and then the kids would run and grab them and sort them into baskets. So very interactive. Kids were very excited about the parachute coming out and getting to have that be part of their learning. All right, so I thought, man, with all of the things that I love to do that are fun, there has to be something that supports what I'm doing. There has to be some research somewhere that says, oh, sorry, I think that just pulled up another copy. Give me a second. What's going on? There we go. All right, so I felt like there had to be something that supported how much I love fun and learning, and that I just needed to find what exactly it was that supported it. And I found Judy Willis. She talks about the neuroscience of joyful learning, and she refers to it as RAD teaching. So RAD, the R stands for reticular activating system. And What it needs is low stress, relevant experiences that are engaging and an appropriate degree of challenge. And when this happens, it activates a part of the brain that can focus attention on new experiences. So if you make your learning environment less stressful, the kids can relate to it, and it can stretch them, but not too far. It then frees their brain to be able to have this extra focus. The A is amygdala, and what it needs is an inviting atmosphere free of intimidation. So this helps students be able to process information and process it through the affective filter. So more the emotional side. And then the D is for dopamine. And what it needs is to be enjoyable, engaging, and fun. And when it's enjoyable, engaging, and fun, it stimulates memory and releases hormones that, again, allow you to focus on attention. So if you feel like scanning the QR code, it will take you to Judy Willis's website, where she talks more about rad teaching. But I love that the brain really wants to work with us if we set up the environment to do so. The other thing I love to do is I really love to be funny and have a really relaxing and humorous classroom environment. And I actually went to an ESSA conference in Kansas City a few years ago and watched a presentation by Tara Brown. And she talks a lot about social emotional connection between students and teachers. And then one particular piece of her work is on using humor in the classroom. So I just took from her list my favorites. There are more, and if you scan that QR code, it will also take you to the full list. But I love that humor links old information to new, that it increases students' creativity when they're humorous, and it increases motivation and attentiveness. And then it also builds trust between the teacher and the student. All of those things also help with the rad teaching that we saw before. All right, so now I'm going to dive into some more of the nitty gritty stuff. But before I do, does anyone have questions or comments about the social emotional fun part of it? Oh no, my QR code doesn't work. All right, I am sorry about that. If you Google Tara Brown, you'll be able to find her website. So I hope that's helpful. All right, so yes, I think they're posting the presentation. So when it comes to phonemic awareness, I set it up kind of like I do in the classroom, which is I do. And I'm always trying to think of a game that I can use and then how I can connect it to learning. So when I taught kindergarten, I thought, man, we really need to work on initial sounds. And so I set chairs up like musical chairs. And then I set a radio out. And I put one fewer chair than there were students, but don't worry because everybody gets to be involved. And then I put pictures of different things that started with the initial phonemes that I wanted. So maybe one started with A, one started with B, and it's just the pictures. And one student gets to run the radio and a picture that matches the initial sounds. So as the music's going, the kids walk around, they press the stop button, everybody tries to find a seat, and then whoever has the sound that matches the initial sound of the picture that they're sitting at gets to be the next one to do the radio. The reason I like it is, one, it's fun. Two, everybody's going to be working on learning the whole time. And if you're the one that's chosen, it's not sad, it's not a punishment. You get to do something fun until you get back into playing the game. The other one is Duck, Duck, Goose. This one I put with ending sound, so it would be the same, giving pictures for the kids. And they can say one sound, and then when they change the sound, whoever has the card that has the same is the one that they're going to chase. So it's really just finessing little rules about games we already know and kids already know to connect it to learning. Stand up, sit down. Kids beg me to play this. It is a very easy game. I say words with focused sounds. And then if it matches the sound, they stand up. If it doesn't, they sit down. So if I was working on k and I said cat, cape, they'd be standing, bear, then they'd sit down. And sometimes I'll do 2 in a row to make sure that they're on the edge of their seat listening to what it is that we're focused on. Guess my sound with initial, medial, or final sounds would be saying, I want you to listen to the first sound of these words. Can you guess what my sound is? And then you say words like cape, cave, carnival, and then they can guess. I actually have buzzers that the kids can hit. The buzzers, I wait for everybody to hit their buzzer, and then we all answer together. But there's just something fun about getting to hit a buzzer. So I'm going to stop my share screen for just a minute, because the next thing I want us to do is a we do, which is how could we use the game 4 corners, which is where you go to different corners in the classroom, and teaching phonemic awareness. So how could we take a game where you go to 4 corners of the classroom and the concept of phonemic awareness or sound awareness to create a game that focuses on learning? Anyone have an idea?
Do all of the kids go to the corner like at the same time? Or so would you say something like, when I say a word that it starts with the k sound, go to that corner and they all run? Or I don't know if they have 4 corners game.
Yeah, that's essentially the concept. And
Okay.
yes, you get to make the rules, right? So
Okay.
it could be
I was
that you
sure
have,
we're trying to get them to go to different ones, or
yeah, I mean, that kind of made me, your response made me think of 2 different scenarios, right? So one could be, I have a picture of a cat, I have a picture of a bat, I have a picture of a dog, and I have a picture of a bird, right? We're just listening for the sounds that start the same. It could be that everybody runs there. Or it could be you're in the middle, and only when your sound is heard, you get to run to your corner, right? And then when the next person comes, really, I make up the rules.
that's great.
However I want to, thinking of behavior management, right? Like, okay, if I have a class of 30, do I want them all running to one corner, right? Maybe not. So maybe I want to make smaller groups going to certain corners, then everybody's still listening, because like, is it our turn to run, right? So I kind of think of all of those different things as I'm piecing together, this is the learning activity, this is the game, this is the safety, these are the behaviors, right?
Love it.
But yeah, you were right on. Like, you had the concept of the game and the learning target. So the next thing I had on that slide was you do. Can anyone think of a game from childhood that you could use to teach phonemic awareness?
So you do, meaning the students are going to do it?
I'm assuming you're students right now. So I've told you what I do in my classroom. We've talked about 4 corners of phonemic awareness together. Can you think of a game that would be usable for the same sort of concept? And Elizabeth, thank you for responding so much. I appreciate appreciate your willingness to jump in.
I was just trying to think of like Connect 4, and not to play it like normal, but we would say pick this word cat, and you put in the first sound k, and then I do a, and then you do the next sound. So you could name
Yeah.
sounds of a word. I don't know. That's just
Yeah, no, I think that's great because each word could have a column, right? And you could, how many sounds in this one? And you could drop with each. That was beautiful.
okay.
But I would, as a child, I would much rather do that than just sound back sounds to you, right? That's far more fun because now I'm building something and I'm, there are bright colors and I can see my finished product, all those things. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. Also, I put these blocks here. Oh, maybe you can't see that yet. I put these blocks here because oftentimes I'll have students move blocks or build a tower with blocks. If I want them to pay close attention to the medial sound, I'll make it a different color. All right, so phonological awareness is where we're playing around with where sounds are at and being able to change them. So when I say word ladders, I mean like a series of words like change band, change the b in band to sand, change the in sand and take away the d. Now we've got fan. That one's pretty complex because there's 2 parts to it. But word ladders are using those, playing with phonological concepts, but you can find words that are built in that manner for you. So for phonological awareness, if I'm looking for how many sounds are in a word, oftentimes I'll use blocks. I'll use stickers. We'll use small toys. So we can put how many stickers are going to be in our word ladder. And we can say, the butterfly sticker is where the sound is going to change, or the sound's going to change. We're going to move this toy away. A lot of times it's just little counting bears. Or little flat marbles that we can move. The other one is I'll give hints about a mystery word. So I might say like it has 3 sounds. It starts with this sound, it ends with this sound, and then give like a definition of it. And then they can buzz in. Again, I have everybody buzz in before I have them say the answer. Sound toy sorts. This picture shows one of the sorts that we did. It has the letters on it, but I just turned the containers so they can't see the actual letter. And then I put the first toy in and we tap how many sounds are in it. And then we start figuring out what the rule is. What is the sound we're listening for each bucket? Cars with sound boxes. I have they're almost like matchbox cars. So if you look at the Elkion boxes that I have here, I'll tell them like first sound, second sound is ah, third sound is t. And then we'll drive the car slowly across it at first. So at cat, and their car gets to go faster and faster. I also do that with like a train. So we'll have our arms going and we'll do like at, and then as the train leaves the station, the train gets faster, and then we can have a smooth word. So at cat, and we just kind of play the train until we've figured out what the word is. Bingo daubers are great to use as sound boxes. Again, if I want a certain spot, a beginning sound, an ending sound, or a medial sound, I'll just dab it to be a different color. Lots of times I have these like coins. I call them coins. They're plastic circles. One side is red and one side is yellow. Again, we can just set them all out yellow, and then I can have them flip it to red for the sound that's different. This week, my kids were very excited. I had pom-poms. So we were using them to say each syllable of the word, and then all the pom-poms would go up all together when we figured out the words. So just little mini cheerleading for our syllables. All right, so the us coming together is how could you use crayons, because most of us have crayons, and word ladders without using the alphabet to help us play with word sounds. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Didn't know I was going to put you all on the spot for having to interact tonight.
So you're saying, okay, so would you identify each crayon color as a different sound related to the color of the crayon?
I feel like that's one way you could set the game up, right? Like if I say cat, let's find out how many sounds. Cat. All right, let's color, a circle for each of those sounds, and each one's a different color. So you could use crayons that way, right? You could also just like set crayons as a manipulative. You could have them, you get to draw something with however many lines that there are sounds. If there are 3 sounds, you get to make a 3-line at, right? So however, to get a physical motion in or a color related to it, just some sort of action that they enjoy, which most kids enjoy coloring, with the new concept that you're trying to bring about. So the you do is how could you use students' body movements and word letters?
I'm just thinking you could have, if it's a 3-letter word, you have 3 students stand, and you start with cat and you change it to cut. The students whose sound got changed has to jump forward or jump back. And so they're playing the game.
I love it.
Yeah, jumping is great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
So-
I like, anytime you can get them physical, it sticks in their brain a lot better than just having them sit.
Yeah.
Yes. Part of the reason I'm sharing what I do and then having us do it together and then having one of you think of it on your own is I think it sounds intimidating to think of, here's a game with a ton of rules, now teach with it. But we can actually come up with them pretty fast in our head if we get into the habit of it. I oftentimes
go to Amazon and order a kit, like just grab pencil, like crayons, like love it.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oftentimes I'm doing it on the fly too. I'm like, oh, the kids are confused about this. I have like an entire tower of just manipulatives that I'm like, okay, we're gonna grab the daubers and I will just make up a game on the fly to support where there's a misunderstanding.
Yeah. Can I ask a question on the phonological awareness?
Sure.
So I saw you had are they L. Conan boxes?
Yeah.
Okay. And you had the green and then the red and then the green. When you're asking them to change out the middle, do you physically remove it and put a new one in, or do you just have them touch it? How do you teach that?
So like the one that I had set up, that one might be where I'm teaching a new sound that like maybe I'm working with ah. And so I
Okay.
really want them listening for ah. So I've turned it a different color
Okay.
because I want them to physically see when they get to that one, I want them to listen. And that gives them kind of a visual cue of it.
Okay.
I do have them physically move
Okay.
pieces out and replace them. Today I had a group of kids, I just drew whiteboard marker erases off of tables. It's really, and they think they're breaking a rule, and then they think they're being like a little bit naughty, but I allow it. So I just drew a circle in front of them and I put a pile of flat marbles. And then I pulled from those same boxes, like there was a pig. I pulled the pig and I said, okay, let's all say pig. We tapped pig. And then from the pool of marbles, they pulled down p, g. So they got it multiple ways. It was really fast. And then we just put the marbles away and wiped off the table. So.
Okay. So in that case, if you said and they're older, or you say, we have pig, now change it to pug, you would just have them move the marble that was the I away and grab a different one and pull it in as the U.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I'd want them to see that it's something completely different.
Yeah. And that it's
for me, that makes sense. Something changed. I should have a physical change.
Perfect. Okay. Because I went to do the poker chips because I got that from one of the Decoding Dyslexia's things and love it. I love the manipulatives, help so much with it, having that physical, but I didn't know what to do to have him, do I physically have him change it or anyway, so great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go back to my share screen. Okay, so then we get to letter sound correspondence. I feel like that's like the start, is being able to recognize that letters have sounds and what the letters are. So I go to Goodwill and Salvation Army and yard sales, and I am on the lookout for things like Candyland all the time. And I just take the cards and then I draw the letters on them. And then we play Candyland, but before they can move, we say the letter name and sound. It's not a test, it's not a quiz. So if they don't know it, asking me is always appropriate. And then I always have them echo it back to me. So if they get the two orange card and they're like, I don't know this letter. All right, that gives me an opportunity to teach you. That's D, D, duh. What is it? D, duh. So I always have them practice it after they are told what it is. Kind of quick list. I feel like I maybe made a really lengthy presentation. Color changing highlighters for things are fantastic. So if I want them to draw a letter and say the sound, I'll use a yellow highlighter and then have them go over in a pink highlighter making this letter name and sound, and it changes it colors. And then it's like magic. I have a group who's very into Mother May I right now with letter names and sounds. So they all line up and they get to move one tile across the floor. As long as they either say the sound or the name. So I'll show a letter and I'll say sound. They say the sound, they get to step one. If they say the name instead, we go back to the beginning. We'd make it very lighthearted. Oftentimes the whole group will go back and they'll laugh and then we'll move forward, and then they take turns being the leader. Lots of memory. So I try not to do decks that are too big, but and memory would be matching upper and lowercase letters. when you flip it over, you have to say the name and sound. We do Go Fish. Jenga, I also try to find those everywhere I can, because you can pull the pieces after you've written the letters on the Jenga pieces. In our program, we use Zoophonics. So Zoophonics has a particular animal associated with it, a sound. The animal's name has the beginning sound for both its first and last name. I've also used sign language with associating the letter name and sound. Wax resist. This is one that you probably have the supplies for, and you take a crayon and you practice your handwriting with it. So R, and then we get watercolor paints and we brush over it, and the water disperses away from the crayon. It feels like magic, especially if you write the initial letter in a white crayon on white paper and then watercolor it. All of a sudden your letters show up that you've been writing. Flat marbles and phonemic awareness. So I took pictures of the beginning sounds like kite, koala, and king. And then I put the number of marbles that I wanted them to say the beginning sound. And then at the end of the line, I put the letter itself. And then we had microphones. So we would do like koala, king, kite. And then we mic drop on the letter K, boom. Kids love mic dropping. And they thought they were pretty funny. All right, so this picture, I put it here because it shows a lot of support for some of the things I do. And I think that seeing a picture of it is helpful. So you can see that I have letter cards, and here we're actually playing Go Fish. And so we're looking for who has I always have my vowels in red. You can see it on my poster. I've highlighted them with highlighter tape red. The cards, they're red. Vowels are so important. They're what build syllables. And they also change a lot. So the next thing I did was then put down our Zoophonics mats. And as kids found partners, we put the coins on to eliminate the ones we'd already found. I always feel like when I'm teaching, I'm not testing. I want to give them as many supports as possible to find the sound, to find the name, and have a resource to help them figure it out, in addition to knowing that they can ask me, and that's always an option. So if we were looking for letter sound correspondence or letter naming correspondence, and we had, if you see these little circle manipulatives that are very transparent, how could you use a leveled reading book and those to help identify letters? I'm going to go ahead and stop my share for a second. So you've got a book that's age appropriate. You've been talking about the letter D, and you've got coins. How can you use that tool to help with the recognition of D?
I'd have the students look for words that had that letter in it, and then either put it on the word or on that letter. Depends on how big the font is, and, or count.
Yeah.
You know, each time they find one, they put one of those little discs out and see how many they have for that page or that paragraph.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things they do. We open the book. How many D's can you find? And they oh my goodness, we found 5 D's on this page. And we call it I Spy, like I spy the letter D. Everybody look and spy the letter D. And then I'll read the D words to them. And they've now recognized D all over the place. You could even do it, I guess phonemic awareness wise, if there were pictures in the book to put the coins on things that started with D. So if there was a picture of a dog or a doll, you could do it that way as well. So thinking of, we have tons of worksheets at our disposal and they can be super boring. How can you use one of the tools that you've seen or heard to make a worksheet more supportive and engaging? And if you're stumped, I can tell you some things I do because I never do a worksheet with a pencil. It's very rare that we use just a pencil in my room.
Yeah, that's where you could use the movable alphabets or the alphabet little squares and put them on the worksheet, depending on what you do.
So kids in my class will typically know when they come in, if you were to ask them what color a vowel was, which vowels don't actually have a color, but they do in my room, a vowel is red. It is always red. So we have red colored pencils, we have red markers, we have red crayons. So when they're writing a word in a worksheet, say we've done all of these like manipulative things and now we're moving to a worksheet. If they see it, if they're writing a vowel, they'll write it in red. I've also had kids where I've taken word art and made very big letters and then had them turn them into something that started with that sound. So like K could be doing karate. And so they draw like a karate band and the K is kicking and so we would brainstorm different things the letters could be, and then they could use art. So lots of ways that I take either color or movement and have them do the worksheet in a more meaningful, connected way. All right, I'm going to share again. All right, this was just adorable that my kids were doing. We were working on transitioning from just letters to words. So each kid in my program gets their own Play-Doh. And when they're making a letter, as they roll it out, we work on saying the name and the sound. So each kid was assigned a letter. If they were building M, they were saying M, as they rolled it out. And then we built a bank of their letters. And then we tapped out the sound Sam and the sounds to Sam. And then whose letter makes the first sound. They were very excited because there was ownership over this Play-Doh that they made. My letter, S. And it gave them a personal connection to the letter that they were putting into the word. The other thing that I was inspired through violin was my teacher once taught me a song. She said, this is the bread of the song. This is the cheese of the song. Then you're going to go back to the bread. And I thought, wow, sandwiches are something that kids can really grasp. What if we built word sandwiches? So if you take a CVC word, consonants are always bread and vowels are your toppings. So in this scenario, the kids were using the bread, the jelly, and the bread to first sound it. Then we built the sandwich. We built the words onto the sandwich. I have them laminated so we can write with whiteboard markers and erase them. And then after that, we made a list of the words that we built. This was all after we reviewed letter names and sounds. So I always try to start at a lesson and at a week. Let's start with sounds. Let's then move to letters and their sounds. Then let's move to manipulating the word. On this board, I don't have the vowels in red, but typically those would be in red when I write them on a whiteboard. And when we're blending words, so once we've built the sandwich, oftentimes we'll use like a little magic wand from the dollar store, or finger puppets, or a toy car. I have little puppets that eat the sandwiches, Matt, and then they eat a Matt sandwich. They think that's pretty funny. So when I get into blends, digraphs, and trigraphs, I have them start putting a dot on their bread. Otherwise, my sandwiches would be really huge, but I want them to keep track of the sounds. So you could have ST bread, like cinnamon raisin bread, or like banana walnut bread, or you could just have a single sound piece of bread, like ch or p. And then we build the sandwiches with our blends and digraphs as well. Games that I like to play with just the word parts. Again, memory, go fish, tic-tac-toe. If you do tic-tac-toe, like for example, we've got some blends going on there. I would be the gr blend and somebody else would be the cl blend, and we'd practice writing and sounding it as we played the game. Same with dots. The dot to dot boxes, you often see them in a restaurant where I draw a line, you draw a line, I draw a line, you draw a line. And instead of putting your initial inside, you would practice that blend or that digraph or trigraph to mark your boxes full. All right, I'm gonna see if my video will play. There's a website, it's called Watch No Learn. It's for educational videos that are sorted by grade and also by subject. This Bossy video like cracks me up, and so I'm going to show you. Let me know if the video if the sound doesn't work. Oh, hold on. Come back, Bossy E.
One time the vowels were talking. A said to I, E is getting bossy. He goes from being nice to being bossy. He's bossy. It jumps over consonants. It says, say your name. Say your name, Val. We call him Evil E. Evil E. Making the vowel say his name while he says twice.
Grammarly helps you work more efficiently.
So that's just one example of the type of videos that you can find on Watch No Learn. But sometimes I'll think in my head like, oh, I wish I could make the E do this. I'll look on Watch No Learn to see if they have something similar to what my brain is imagining. So when I started making the word sandwiches, I felt like E, I was calling him the Bossy E. He makes them say their own name, that he needed to somehow like scare the vowel into saying its own name. So if tap becomes cape, it's because Bossy E is trying to eat the sandwich and get to the topping inside.
Nessie has theirs online too, and they're very similar. So you can look on YouTube for the Nessie ones, like the I-Y-E makes the softy of C, and he's like this big gorilla that's like talking about soft C, you know?
I love it.
Yeah, so all of theirs are really good. Like CK has to protect with a shield. They don't have a friend, you know, so they need CK shield, and I'm here to protect you. So those are all really good, and they're nice because just the videos of them are free on YouTube. So
yeah, I also discovered Alpha Blocks. It comes out of, I think it comes out of Britain, but it's these little blocks that are like, we can run, we can play, and then they join together to make words. They each say their sound and like change to make a word. So there's some really great resources out there to help bring that action to life of what they do. Thank you for sharing that resource. I'm going to look into it. Also, when I have students learning Bossy E, I will have them physically draw, I call it a rainbow from the E to the V, because they're really working together, but they're not touching. So that's kind of harder to visualize. So I just have them draw this little rainbow over it. Then I would tell them, like, the long vowel, the CV, is the open face sandwich. So if you just had peanut butter toast for breakfast, that would be the long sound. And then I alternate moving a piece of bread. And I'm usually really playful about it. Like, oh, it's B, now it's bet, B, bet, B. And we just kind of play with that in a really lighthearted way to be able to recognize how that changes it. R controlled, I usually use a piece of cheese for R controlled. I don't know why I chose cheese, but I feel like it's a natural second topping. And then I also think of other things, like if you have your hand like a hook, this looks kind of like an A, and this part looks like an R, or the pirate hook. So AR says R, like you're like a pirate. OR, ORE, OAR sound the same. They're spelled different, but it's like the oar of a boat. So if it has an O in it, you can think of a boat oar. And then IRERUR, I try to get to that affect side and think of like, it's kind of like when somebody's growling or an animal's growling, and try to give a connection that they'll think is fun or funny. And again, I get as creative as I need to on helping them find a connection that works for them. And then I feel like sandwiches can't not have a pickle. Oh, go back. Well, let me go back. So our LE consonant syllable is a pickle with the E trying to eat it. And I've been looking into it and thinking about YEL and LE, and found mostly that it morphed from one to the other, but is used, both are used. One is just more common now. So word study syllables. When it comes to syllable sandwiches, you can kind of see at the bottom, I have them break each syllable into a sandwich. And then we talk about how that comes together to be a big sandwich. I actually have one group where I'm working with a younger student and an older student at the same time. And the younger student was building like CVC words with blends. And the older student was building this beautiful long word. And he finally said, I said, are you ready for your next word? And he said, no, I want to make a big word. So then they worked together to build a really big sandwich. The other way that I have it broken apart is we look for our vowels first. We either underline them or highlight them. Then we swoop under syllables. We circle parts that we know. And then we go across the syllables until we get to the whole word smoothly. Really, like, each of those chunks then becomes far more manageable than this big scary string of letters. This was a lesson that I was doing. We were learning DGE and TCH. So after we'd done some playing around with the sounds of the words and building the words, then I wrote numbers above them and we rolled a dice, and then they could act them out, and you'd have to guess which one from the board was the one that they were acting out. So it got movement in, it got vocabulary building in, I got our phonics in and phonemic awareness. So they were all together. I also let them play like Pictionary with those. Yeah. All right, so puppets. I started using puppets a lot after watching my daughter at the library when she was young, and I would see librarians pull out a puppet and just the atmosphere of the room would change so fast, and kids were fascinated with puppets. So I use them. One, they can eat the word sandwiches, which the kids think are hilarious after they build them. It can model sounding out words and reading words. It can work with spelling words. I've used them for math too, honestly. And getting feedback from a puppet is much less intimidating than getting feedback from your teacher. So sometimes I'll use the humor with my little puppet, like, that sounds is puh. And they'll be like, no, I didn't mean for it to be puh. Oh, what sound should it be? They find it far more funny if a puppet is trying to learn rather than a teacher correcting them. As a matter of fact, my daughter, I was working on teaching her to read when she was young, and she did not want to listen to me, but we had a little puppet. And so I taught her to read almost entirely through using a puppet. Okay, so then we get into high frequency words and sight words. High frequency words are the most common words used in written language, and sight words are the words you recognize by sight. They get specialized over time. So I think about, as a teacher, there are words that I use that my husband doesn't use in engineering, but that we both start evolving this word bank of words we know by sight. Most sight words that you'd see on a list can be phonetically broken down. So I made a table for students. This is just kind of a sample of the table I made. I say the word, they say it back. We tap it. They tell me how many sounds. Then we map that number of sounds into the table. Then they graph the spelling under each box that corresponds to a sound, and then they write it. This idea I got from Reading Rockets. The table I made myself just so that I had like a consistent thing to refer to. But Reading Rockets has some great stuff that I am constantly inspired by. Some other ways to practice. I'll write sight words on Jenga and we'll pull those. Again, I usually color code them. I've made Candyland with it. Mother May I with sight words. It's usually if I want them to read it or spell it. And then if they follow the direction for read or spell, they get to move forward. Tic-tac-toe, spelling it with our bodies. Spying them in books. Oftentimes we'll put stickers under them. So then we come to another we do, which is how could you use art and sight words? I'm going to check real quick on where I'm at in my presentation. I think we're going to skip the we do, but I think that you could figure out how to use art because we've already practiced a lot of we do's and you do's. So the next section that I wanted to talk about was scaffolding support for fluency. Again, when I think of asking students to read out loud, I have to take into that moment where I was like petrified to hum and what I needed in order to be able to take on that challenge. And that was I needed support from a teacher to feel safe, and she did a beautiful job helping me through that moment. So On day one, I typically, on a 5-day week, I read a story to students. I ask them to track along with their eyes so their eyes can see what I'm saying. And then I ask them to think about the words that I'm saying and the meaning of the story. The second day, I have them echo read. So depending on the size or structure of the text and the students that I'm working with, I could have them echo a sentence or I could have them echo a paragraph, which means I read it out loud, they read it back to me. I also have, to get everybody ready, I have what I call a ready position, which is like my pointer finger pointing up. And then we go ready, set is setting our finger down, and then read. I also talk to students about when we're doing it together that I need to see what I'm saying. So if I'm looking at the ceiling and echoing with everybody, if you're not looking at what you're saying, then you're talking. If you're looking at it while you're saying it, then we're working on reading. Day 3 is choral reading. So that's working on some intonation, some pacing, and you've still got the teacher's voice as that steady background. And then day 4, I have them independent read. And by independent read, I don't mean read it out loud to me in front of other people. I mean, read it independently. So they're whisper reading. Sometimes they're whisper reading to a stuffed animal. Sometimes they're whisper reading to a little game piece. And sometimes they're just whisper reading to themselves. And then we work on the skills we've been practicing in isolation. So while I'm doing these fluency items through the week, I'm still teaching phonics. We're still working on blending. We're still working on syllables and sounds. So by the time they've hit day 4, not only have they had the support fluency wise, they've also had that instruction to support reading independently. And then day 5, they can read to somebody or share with our small group. I teach in a small group setting, so I typically have like 2 to 5 kids at my table. If you're at home, it could be having them share, on their independent day or day 5, read to a pet or read to a younger sibling. And then when we get to scaffolding that support for students who may be older, before we start reading, looking at the chapter headings, the chapter titles, the pictures, making predictions, talking about what the story might be about or what information we might get, summarize information that they've read prior to it. So if it's a chapter book, summarizing the chapter ahead of time. And then I always have a preview for vocabulary. So look through the text we're going to read. And honestly, if you tell kids, tell me the word that you would cringe if I made you read it out loud, that's the word I want us to tackle. So I don't want them to feel like they have to get to it in the reading and feel that moment of panic. We highlight them and identify them ahead of time. And then we break them into syllables. We look them up in the dictionary. We use a thesaurus to see what other words it means. By the time we then read the story, we're already comfortable. We've already attacked those words. Once we've done those, they can read independently. And then when they come back, they can share their favorite paragraph or favorite section rather than having to reread the entire thing. They're still working on that fluency, but it might be a lot more text to have to read a second time. And then I'm gonna do a quick version of comprehension. So general comprehension, listening to audiobooks on car trips and hearing written words read out loud. You can discuss the plot to help with structure. You can discuss the information. My family loves to do this on road trips. modeling yourself making text to text, text to self, or text to world connections. So, oh, that reminds me of a story I read before, or it reminds me of this trip that I went on, or do you remember when we were cooking in the kitchen? This story reminds me of that. Identifying the beginning, middle, and end, who, what, where, when, why, how. I'm going very fast through this part because I can see that my time is almost up. Pausing to check for understanding, especially if it gets to a part where one of those vocabulary words is used, and looking at the text around it. And then quizzing each other after reading. So if you're reading out loud together, maybe you're reading a page and they're reading a page, quiz each other on what you know. It's always fun when a child gets to be the leader. When it comes to nonfiction or informational text, determine the purpose for reading it. Purpose makes a big difference. Try to think about what the author's trying to teach. So identifying that ahead of time, like why would they take the time to write this article or this text? Use the headings, text boxes, diagrams, and pictures ahead of time to set the stage for it. Have them rephrase it as if they were explaining it to a younger child. And then think about what you're going to do before you read on setting the stage for what information you're going to be getting, what you're going to be doing if you need to pause and reread and check during reading, and what questions you might have or have learned afterwards. And then again, you can quiz each other on those items. So my last slide, what questions do you have for me? And then different resources, Decoding Dyslexia Idaho, the Idaho Literacy Resource Center just came out from the State Department. Reading Rockets, Idaho Public Television has things. I put the website for Rad Learning by Judy Willis, and Tara Brown's The Connection Coach website up there. I'm going to stop sharing so that if you have questions, I can see you and not answer to a blank screen. Oh, it's so nice to see your faces again.